Okay, we're going to do about 3 things right here during this time. We're going to back clean up on the bad guy side of things. Then also I want to be able to pull some questions from you and see whatever you want. But as these speakers have been talking, being able to be last, I have a chance to be able to pick up on some things that I think we may just want to tighten up on just to make certain, because this is for your benefit, so you guys know. One of the questions that we were talking about, number one, I think the immediate victim kit you guys are doing is empowering law enforcement. That does about 15 different things. It empowers relationship between the nonprofits and law enforcement. It gives you additional tools that you may not be able to fund. Stuff like that is just incredible. We talked about the issue of safe harbor, and working with the folks from the state of Kansas, we're talking about this. We're not doing it, we're talking about it right now. They're going to their Attorney General's office to see what can happen, because you don't want to take them from captivity and put them in captivity, but you're not a victim, or you're not a criminal, but we're going to hold you. Okay, it's kind of a tough concept to do. But what we've talked about is going into a help contract with a client. And number one, it values them. And it says, we need you right now very much to help us fix this process. And we want to help you in the process. So if you would go into a contract with us for 30 days, it's a help contract. But we need you. And for 30 days, we'll help provide you shelter. You'll help provide us information so we can keep this from happening again. But it values them as a resource in the solution as opposed to continuing them into the captive mindset or whatever. So that was one thing that we were kicking around. Let's see, immigration advocacy. I've heard that you guys are a melting pot of multiple cultures here. And so your aspect of dealing with people who are not U.S. citizens or green carded or they're undocumented is very important. So I want to talk to both the law enforcement and to the non-NPOs really quick. There's a process, many times because they're undocumented, they need help in getting the right things. And the documents that law enforcement has to sign that say, yes, we feel that they're a victim of human trafficking is necessary for federal stuff. However, there's a way you can help, because nonprofits can get be trained in immigration advocacy that even allows you, without being an attorney, to fill out and complete the legal immigration documents that allows them to go forward to get a T visa or a U visa. You do not have to be an attorney to do this. It's a special provision that allows certain nonprofits to do this, and then your nonprofit becomes that service in the state or in a state for that. And I don't know if there's any organization set up for that in Tennessee, but there wasn't a single one in Iowa. There was like 2 in Texas. But these are nonprofits who help bridge that gap between the law enforcement saying, yes, they were in a trafficking environment, and yet how do they get legal help to get that documentation start to get filed for a T visa or a U visa? And NGOs, you can help with that. So if a lot of your client base is undocumented, you can help with that. Let's see. Oh, you have that already in process. Good deal. Good deal. Okay. I want to talk about 2 other industries that weren't really talked about. The Asian massage parlors. And I'm not profiling a demographic of culture, but there are culturally significant things. Okay? There are certain things in certain ethnicity cultures that lean into language, that lean into cultural phrases, that is amicable to the trafficking industry. Asian nail salon. Asian nail salons have an entire network fabric across. In fact, I would tell you the Asian nail salon industry section of this, that channel in this business model, is probably one of the more organized out of any of it. There's regional things, local things, but if you really want to talk about organization, the Asian nail salon industry has it going on. And in fact, we did a training in Knoxville, Tennessee, and one of the people we trained happened to be getting his hair done at a I guess that's funny. He was having his hair cut at a place on a strip mall and happened to see out the back, and a white van pulled up, and like 10 young Asian girls got out and 10 Asian girls got in. It was just like a big swap. And he said he just had a training, so he had the framework in his mind, called the hotline, got an action rolling, and shut down that Asian nail salon. It was part of a ring where they would haul through 13 or 15 different cities in the region, or actually nationally, like Indianapolis, Chicago, Omaha, and just run them around, swapping the girls every 2 weeks. And so I'm not saying that every Asian nail salon is that, but I'm saying it's a very organized fabric that it's probably one of the more organized fabrics we've seen. Next one, mag crews. Do you know when I say mag crew, do you know what that means? Anybody not know? Okay, these are the, okay, you ever had young kids come to your door selling magazines? Magazine crews. Okay, I'll share this, I'll share the whole thing with you and you'll just go, really? How many of you had those come to your door? Okay, I've worked with 3 crews that were all involved in human trafficking. And if the girls didn't sell enough mags that day, they got sexed at night for repayment for not meeting their quota. Commercial sex. Commercial sex. And so we were involved in we got actually a hotline call from Polaris, called us, and I was actually in a meeting in North Iowa at the time, and we got this call, said there's a girl calling and says that there's about 6 of them held in the motel room, and they're threatening them to sex them that night if they did, because they didn't meet their stuff, and they said, I got to get these other ones out of here. I can handle it, but they can't handle it. And so, long story short, we're working with the local police department. We're on the phone, moving. We're rolling in there, ready. Got them all into the. We had it all planned. They were just going to walk out and go to the convenience store to get, because that was their food. They were given about $5 to go get snack food at the convenience store, and they'd always go into a hotel. These guys would blow into town and blow out all over the just driving state to state. And so the plan was they would walk out to go get their snacks and get right in our vehicles, and then the police would roll in behind and get the bad guys. And so it didn't work that way. You heard it does. It kind of fell apart, but the police department stepped right in. We had the bad guy in the car, and one of the bad guys and 2 of the clients got away. He took them and ran to the vehicle, but we had one of them. They let him off in 24 hours because we couldn't get a DA to pick up the case. So we had him in the car. We had all the clients, except for the 2 that got the 2 that got away, and we couldn't hold them. And they couldn't get a DA to pick up the charges. So he goes, we can only hold them. I had to sit down with the detectives in this local city, and he said, explain to me why this is human trafficking. I mean, I could give them because they didn't have a sales permit. I could give them that, but I can't hold this guy until you give me something, until someone will charge him. And I said, they were being sexed because they didn't perform a quota of selling magazines. And that is a Commercial Sex Act. And I'm having to work with it. So, okay, but they couldn't get a DA to pick it up. So they let him go. The next day, we picked up the other bad guy and the 2 clients in Colorado Springs. That's from Iowa to Colorado Springs in 24 hours. And so one of the other kids knew where they were just happened to be headed. And so we were able to call some people we work with in this, and we were able to get the other clients out in Colorado Springs. Now, not all the mag crews are dirty. I just haven't met one that is, or that is legit. Because they deal with this 16, 17, 18, and they'll just say, well, they told me they were 18, but they're really 17, they're really 16. And so I still have pictures on my phone today of what happened to some of the young boys. And it's worse than any sexual hazing you could get, you know. In fact, that's what the human trafficking hotline sent me. He goes, this is the only way you'll know the one you're getting. And I said, what do you mean the one I'm getting? Well, there's more there, but it's the only one who had the picture of it. I said, okay, we'll get them all. And we were able to pull them all, and we had them all back in process, had them all headed back to their homes and verified their parental status, and their house was in good shape, their families were good, and we could ship them, but we had them all back in their homes, one into the United States to the other, because they pull kids from all over, and we had them all distributed back with right in about 5 days. We had them all back at home. And, but all of them had been sexualized. Male or female, doesn't matter. One was sodomized with a broomstick. You know, because of magazines, because you didn't buy, you know, fishing. So be aware of this. So whenever you have these come to your house, ask questions, and you'll watch them backpedal. What happens to you if I don't buy a magazine today? What happens to you? And you watch them divert and duck, and you can step in those moments. And you can step in and say, if you stay in my house right now, you'll be safe, and I'll get help for you right now, and you begin to call. But I mean, because these guys are very, very, very aggressive, and it's also very well organized. The organization we've ran into twice is based out of Colorado Springs, and they go nationally all the time with as many as 28 crews in the nation at any given time. So maybe that gives you a little bit different perspective. All right. Boys, I wanted to address this also. I know people talk a lot about women, and I think I've heard many different stats, from 65 to 85% are female. I will tell you in our organization we're about 50-50. We deal with as many males as we have females. I think I can say it's about, depending on what year, it was about even up. I worked with 15-year-old boys, 13-year-old boys. I think that's the youngest boy was 13. We've dealt with a person, the youngest was about 13. We dealt with girls that are a lot younger than that, but we've had guys, it just doesn't matter, guys who felt that I couldn't get a girlfriend, so I tried that, and the next thing you know, they were drawn right into being a male prostitute. A couple other things before I finish this. Don't expect rational behavior from people who aren't able to think rationally at the time. All of us are hyperlogical because we're running organizations, because we're effective in what we do. We know law, we know real things, we know we're organized in our head. And then we get around people who aren't able to say the same thing twice, people who aren't consistent with what they're saying, they're about as reliable as a tornado. And how are we supposed to build rational cases on people who are irrational? It's very true. You can deal with someone who's even 21, 22 years old that was trafficked when they're 16. They know nothing about insurance. We've had to tell people, hey, because one of our clients said, hey, we want to get a checkbook so I can spend money. They had no concept of even how that worked, or even how a bank worked. They just thought checkbook meant money. Just because their life skills were absent, because they were too busy playing life playing big game sexual life at such a young age. They've missed entire subsections of life. Their entire thinking culture is entirely different. So lower your expectations of consistency, rationalization, ability to communicate. Well, you just lied to me. I don't like when you just can't go there. We just assume they're going to lie to us, and we have to average their stories out over time and say the consistent thing we've heard is this, because we heard this more than we heard the other stuff. And so we build things based on consistency. Okay. And I'll close with that, but we'll go on with this now. Now, I just want to fill in any gaps of what's happened here. And so let's see here. We already went through all the basic concepts. We're not going to go anything about that. I don't believe most of the stats we hear anyway. Johns, we've talked about, these are just the people who are the customers of this. And there's been some good things. I could give you some national information of people who really started to prosecute very strongly the Johns in the process and started to hammer on the industry. Okay, every other industry in America has gone through economic downturns in some way, shape, or form, except this one. And so we start to think about ways we can disrupt that economic flow. And if you start to damage the customer base, you can do it. So even if you say, well, it's impossible to get at all these girls because they're all over, it's impossible to prosecute. What if we then took another route and started going after the guys who are the consumers or the girls that are the consumers and started drilling that line down as heavy as we are, as heavily as we would go after the traffickers. I understand the concept. We want to shut down the ring, and we want to shut down the global impact of trafficking. I understand all of that big language. But well, you have to impact them at the core of the industry, which is financial. So how can we do this? We've done a couple actions in Texas that's pretty interesting. We went after building code of one of the buildings of a brothel. We sent in the health inspectors to get the facility shut down. And because we couldn't get in legally, we could find another avenue to go in and hit the industry. It's kind of, if you remember the story of William Wilberforce, and who shut down slavery in Europe, he went a whole different route than hitting it head on in that area and found an entirely different way to shut down that travesty that was going on. And there's a lot of different ways we may be able to come up with to go about this. And maybe part of the way is to change our laws as far as the consumers shut down the intake side, or at least it'll force it to manifest in something else than what we have right now. And if there's a way to tear down that process, we do big actions around Super Bowls and big major tech conferences around Miami, down in Florida. They're always moving after the big events that come in. And the Olympics was an international sex fest. Just the people we deal with who work in this site internationally, they ship in kids from other nations just to service the Olympics. And that's they're building for the demand. And so is there a way we can begin to think, even in your own sphere of influence, how can you shut down the money flow? How can we impact the economy of this industry in some way that makes sense? All right, I've already said it can be everybody, and FBI did a great job with all of this. Let's see. Okay, the demand. We're talking about this right now. The demand of the process, and I want to say something else about. You may not know what supports it, but anytime you participate in pornography as a consumer, you are feeding this thing. There are 2 or 3 places in the nation that are meccas for this. The pornography industry is like the appetizers for the industry that we're talking about today. And you may go, well, it's just me, it doesn't impact anybody else, that's just me doing this. I will tell you, if you are funding into the avenues of pornography, you are sowing into the very thing we're trying to slow down that economic structure. Because the pornographic fabric is the underpinning of all this. And I will tell you, the most, and I mean, I don't get shaken up by much. I've dealt with trafficking internationally. I've seen stuff that's just ridiculous in my head. Nothing has messed with my life ever than a 3-second clip of child pornography that I witnessed. Just being in this industry. Messed me up for weeks. Weeks. That the pornographic industry is moving at such an aggressive nature to feed this thing. They're the primers, they're the invitations for all of this. They're feeding the actual demand. It's just like the popcorn and Coke in the theater. That's always there. We all know it's there. We all know they're going to tell us to buy Coke and popcorn when we go to a movie. We all know it. We've accepted it. It's an accepted mind culture of us. We know when we go to a movie, we're going to get propagated by a mass consciousness to go eat popcorn and pop. And pornography is that common in our industry right now, in the world today. It's that common right now. We go, well, that's just that. That's just that. But it is one of the core feeding mechanisms for this entire industry. And for the people who deal with this way on the inside of this, you can't separate the two. There's no way we can deal with one and not touch the other because it feeds it. And so ask yourself those questions of even what you're feeding into, what you're subscribing to, and what kind of mindsets your activity in that is producing in your life to even change your mind on things. All right, let's keep going. Here's what it is. The tactic is changing. In Sweden is where they started to attack the Johns really hard. They said, we can't seem to get a grip on the traffickers right now, so let's just slap the shizzle out of them, the Johns, and take all their money. Let's levy civil penalties on their checkbooks if they get caught with pornography. Let's put liens against let's make a big fine and put a lien right on their checkbook if they get busted for pornography. Let's go right after their economy to slow down the economy coming into the trafficking industry. You know, we always talk about criminal penalties, but like with our clients that we have, they can go after criminal charges against the bad guys, but we can go civilly at them also. It's a lot harder. You have to have a really good case, but you can go civil to get the bad guys to cough up financially. We tried to go after a house in Oklahoma. It was the house she was trafficked in. I said, let's just get the house, sell the house, and give her the proceeds. Because you can do that. So they started going civil penalties against the bad guys, levying penalties and garnishing their checkbook against it. I thought it was brilliant. That's what it'll take. I already talked about pornography. Don't need to go into that right now. Let's see. I think we've dealt with all that. That was dealt with very, very well. Just make certain we have everything handled. That's good. Exotic dancing. We have a recurring problem in the city I live in, and we have fully nude strip clubs. Not like Florida or anything, where it's like Quick Trips, but we have 2. And one of them has been shut down 8 times. And every time it gets shut down, about 90 days, set your watch, it'll reopen in about 90 days. Another thing that happened once is they got shut down for throwing a birthday party for one of their 18-year-old dancers. Figure that out. That means she was dancing at 17, which is illegal. And so we talked about organs a little bit, exotic dancing. FBI did a great job of this. I do want to deal with the coercion thing a little bit. This is just captivity without chains. The threats, the intimidation is so real. And it may not even be true, but it's real to them. Because it's a threat that says, if you don't, I will. If you don't, we will. We know where your cousin lives, that little cute cousin you have that you talk to on Facebook. We know where she's at. And if you don't do this, she's done. And that type of coercion just goes on. What does that do? And it goes, well, to us, we go, well, yeah, well, we can protect that. Well, what do you do with the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old who hears that? She'll think, well, I'll give up my life to save hers. And so these type of mindsets are very pervasive. And I know we're just giving you stuff most of you know in those kind of processes. My brother-in-law was a sheriff in Nampa, Idaho. And I didn't get to see him very often, but when we get together, he would want to talk shop about what we're doing, what he's doing, and everything. And he said, we started something different. We actually started an initiative to specifically think when a child, a girl, or a boy comes up missing, we immediately default to trafficking abduction before we think domestic or before we think runaway. We forced ourselves to intentionally think that first so we could answer some basic questions and put our mind in a gear so we could think that way first, then default domestic, then go domestic, and then go runaway or something like this. So they flip their mindsets upside down. So they just think if someone's gone, we immediately think who took them. Just to help reframe their mind thinking. On the same area, and I mean, you guys are all smart enough to figure out that there's evidence, and there's families, you know, a lot of times it's family. You know that, but unless you default into this area, you won't ask yourself some basic what-if questions. What if they're in trafficking? We only have 24 hours. We don't have time to call in a dive team to search a pond from LA because they'll probably be in Minneapolis being flipped tonight. So let's ask questions right now. Who saw, you know, and then you just exhaust those questions first. If it's domestic, you're still going to find them. You know, but ask yourself some of those questions initially, just to change your mindset with that. The other thing with this is in abductions, the time frames are so short, they'll be gone. And at least that's what we've experienced, is that they're gone very, very fast. So the time of action gradually moves out. When you're working with this one in North Iowa, anybody who's been around the human trafficking industry, we're like, you know, seriously, you guys are 90 days into this investigation, and you're still wondering if they're at the bottom of a pond. Those of us in our industry, we say it was intentional abduction. We had 7 attempted abductions in a region that were all the same MO, and some of them they hit, some of them they missed. And so we have every reason to believe that they were abducted. And without evidence, without some sort of a clue, we don't know. We had clues telling us they're in Nebraska. I actually rolled a crew to Kearney, Nebraska, to the Hampton Inn on the corner of the, whatever Super 8 on the corner there, because there was some information that they may have been there. And I mean, we were moving to try to come up with some answers. Okay, I already dealt with that very well. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we haven't seen. No need to go into case studies. You've heard all of that. I will tell you one, and it actually came out of, I think it was Arkansas or around Louisville. The strangest domestic trafficking thing I'd ever heard. Had a couple girls and put them in a deer blind, and were charging his buddies $200 or $300 to go into the deer blind to do whatever he wanted with a kid that was in there. And it was just an oddball one. All right. I think we've talked about all of that. I had a 17-year-old boy. 17-year-old boy got a call from a pastor in the western part of the United States. A pastor called me and said, I really got a problem. I got a 17-year-old boy, and I think he's hooking the girls in the church and in his youth group. He had 2 or 3 girls in the youth group turning tricks for him. And because he was 17, at the time there wasn't law in the state that they were in, so they dealt with it all in a juvenile rank, and the kid just took off, and it was all done. I mean, he's gone. No one knows what he's doing now, but he was actually hooking girls in the youth group that he was part of. Thought I had heard everything at that point. I don't know what just happened. There we go. All right, we all know the obvious: gangs, boyfriend, drug dealers. I just don't want to rob you, and I also don't want to overload you with anything. Okay, we've already talked about that. Okay, I want to talk very quickly to the MPOs very quickly. If you don't have a policy, a big policy that protects your clients, please do that. 2 or 3 organizations who wanted to work with clients got themselves into a bunch of trouble because they weren't protecting the client. And understand, you need a very developed child restoration policy that defines how you protect the client, not how you protect your organization. But you have to keep your client access at a high level and a high value in that process. Okay, I think I need to get into service provider relationships. We've already talked about all of that. I think we may go right to questions. The other presenters did a great job. Okay, identification. You won't see what you don't see. And you guys will come out of this time here today in a pendulum swing. And I want you to treat a pendulum swing a little bit differently. You know, like whenever you get into something new and you're aware of something, or you say you had a class on the cartels as law enforcement about cartels in America. Next thing you do, you're seeing cartel activity all over because you got eyes for it. And I'm sure some of you have touched this before, but maybe today you'll come out of this time with a whole different set of vision. You'll come out with a different set of eyes, and that's good. Don't let it pendulum and flow back in. Go ahead and take some time and examine and take some time to look a little deeper this time. Don't treat it like just something that'll pass. Fold it into who you are and let that expand. Let it change your vocabulary. I did a training for an organization in Des Moines a couple years ago, and out of the blue, this guy called me. He kept calling me. I didn't know the number, and he said, "Hey, I'm running a construction crew down here on the interstates in Missouri, and this Mexican lady came out. And had her daughter with her and said she was throwing a party, and it was only $100 to come to the party." And he goes, "It seems sketchy to me." I said, "Do you think?" It sure sounds to me like she's selling her daughter. And he said, "Well, she alluded to that." And I said, "If you have that much information, you call the sheriff," because they were out in the middle of nowhere. I said, "Call the sheriff and use trafficking language. You tell the sheriff, I believe this is human trafficking. I believe this is federal human trafficking violations. I believe this is children being used for commercial sex, which is illegal at a bunch of levels, and I need your help." Give him language to trigger whatever training he has, or he saw news or something. Work with them. Use language that begins to stir activity. Make up phrases if you need to, but get their attention. You can't just sit there and go, "Something's hinky going on, gotta come check it out." You gotta use real language that works. Let's see, I think I'm gonna stop. I think we got all the rest goes into client activity. So here's this is your time, so this is beneficial for you. So what obstacles do you have in this industry? This is a nasty industry, and it's very large. And people go, "How are you ever going to make a dent in this thing?" And that mindset, I want you to change your mindset about it and not think, "How do we win?" Because the probability of us truly saying, "We have shut down trafficking in America," I probably don't see in my history. I don't see in my future. And maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's not. If we live a life that's pass-fail all the time, then if we don't win, if we don't have a chance of winning, just give up. But if we live pass-fail, then those are our choices. But what if it's all about all the differences we make along the way? If it's all about how much difference can we make in this thing? Because the ladies and the boys, the girls and the boys, don't give a flip about the industry. They just care about their own life. So to impact a client is just about them. And in the process of dealing with a bunch of thems, we impact an industry. So maybe it's not about, "We'll beat this thing, raw." Maybe we won't. but maybe we will make a pile full of differences in individual lives during that process, and we'll make this industry hurt along the way. Maybe it's about the influence that each of us make a difference in this along the way. And we go, look, the whole bigger picture, it's not that, I mean, this whole big picture is there, but we just need to consistently make differences at every opportunity we can. Is that enough? Is that enough? Because to a client, their life is all that matters, right? I mean, you are a whole life, and you were you. So you don't give a flip about the whole industry when you were just being you, and it was all about you, and it can still be all about you. And so all the differences that people made in your life really mattered to her. And maybe that's the goal, is to consistently release influence against this industry. Release influence and positive change in people's lives at every level. I think that's why you guys are in law enforcement, to make a change anyway. I mean, pay's not that great, and you're there to make a difference. And maybe that's all we can expect out of this industry, is to consistently release influence into people's lives. And however that all shakes out in the grand scope of human trafficking, who knows? But yet we've released powerful influence along the way. So what questions or obstacles do you have? And maybe we have experience that might be able to help, but what would be the biggest things that would help you be effective to release influence in this industry? Let's just open it up for questions. What's your biggest challenges in this?
Identifying a client.
Identifying a client.
I work in a high school.
Uh-huh.
And we have almost 900 students. So how do I identify a client, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is very important. Tip ID. Trafficking in persons identification. Tip ID. It's very, very important that you train people how to do this. We've done this with lawyers, with teachers, and things like this. And there's a whole profile we can go through that says, when you're talking with them, watch their behavior all the time. Because the package of what they go through, they're not going to just be sitting there happy-go-lucky all the time like a normal teenager would be. And so asking questions and always having eye contact with them is because you got to get into their space, because their space isn't good. And the minute you get into their space, you unlock that space, and they'll duck and run. And I ask them questions like this: tell me some things you have to do. Or I'll ask questions like this. I said, so tell me right now. So in fact, this is my initial interview with a client. I'll say, so tell me right now, if you could do anything in the world you could do right now, what would you be doing? And they had no answer, because it's all been stripped. They have no future. Their life is existence, or they don't even have an answer. Oh, come on, what would one thing you'd be doing right now? And they won't even look at me. Their head can't go there, because that's already been sucked out. Or they won't look at me. All sorts of things. Or I'll tell you, what's your favorite thing to do? I'm trying to pull stuff out of them that should be normal in the life of a healthy identity. Those things that are normative, and I find out I keep hitting a black wall, a black hole, nothing, but I'm right in their space, always with eye contact, and say, come on, tell me, what would you be doing if you could do anything you wanted to do right now? What would it be? Because I want to help you with that. What would you be doing? And there's nothing there. And that's where you get to the really core of an identity with someone. It's usually not at filling out a form. But yet, when you can get into someone's space like that, and cut eyes with them, and try to hold on to them, and start to pull stuff out of their identity, you find out what's left of them there. And when you find out that you keep coming up goose eggs, there's nothing there, there's nothing there, there's nothing there. At minimum, you're in an abusive situation. At minimum, they're a victim of something at that point, because all their them is not present. And I don't know how else to do it without looking. But I'll even do this with prostitutes we deal with. I mean, we've had people come to me and say, this is no kidding. In our organization, we have people come to us and say, I'm a prostitute and I want out. And that's what they'll say. And I'll say, all right. And I'll say, so what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. I want out. I said, well, I'll help you get out, but I want to know what you want to do. And there's nothing there. And I won't even tell them, to quit doing something until I have something for them to do. Because I want to spin their life around and head a whole different direction. So we ask powerful questions in those ways about who they are and what they're about. But they come to us with that and say, here's what I'm doing. Had a lady, this is just a month ago, had a lady who's been doing Craigslist and was doing Craigslist, and she got really close to a sting because the CRPD, Cedar Rapids Police Department, started really pushing pressure on Craigslist in our city, and they were doing stings and stuff. She really just got freaked out. She's, I gotta quit what I'm doing. I just need to get out, and I don't want to be a prostitute and this. So I immediately just said, all right, what do you want to do? Let's create something. What would you be doing if you could just do anything right now? Let's dream and do a what if and come somewhere else. And so that's how we would pull. Did I answer that even closer?
Yeah, and then some.
And then some. All right. Okay, what else? What's another obstacle? Animal, vegetable, mineral. I don't deal with aliens. What else? What's one of the harder things that you see as a roadblock to being effective in this?
What about routine traffic stops? When you make this routine traffic stop, what do they look for?
Yeah.
Are they considered your license? What?
I think the FBI said something. I think the FBI sheet was really, really good about that. Documentation and this whole boyfriend-girlfriend relationship thing is always subject. And so what I was told by some of the ICE folks we work with is that they separate them all the time. They separate them, and they never take whatever they say when they're together as the answer. Okay, I got to tell you a story. In fact, I think I'm correct in this. There were 2 kids that were abducted out of Knoxville, Tennessee, maybe about 90 days ago. 120 days ago. I was going to ask the FBI this if they were involved in this. I think it was Knoxville, Tennessee, that they were taken. The traffickers came and split, and one got busted in Texas, and the other one ended up in North Iowa. And the sheriff just thought it was a runaway and her boyfriend. And he was convinced it was just a runaway and her boyfriend, so she let them talk. And we got a call from one of the organizations we work with in Texas and said, you got to help us out, Rick. There's someone in your backyard. They just landed up there, and the sheriff's treating it like boyfriend runaway thing. And we have the other trafficker busted. We're going to have to federal charges on him down here. And so I know what county it was in and everything like this. I called the Attorney General's office. I told the Attorney General's office, the lady who helped write the Iowa legislation on human trafficking. And I said, hey, I need to read you in on something. I really need your help. Is there any way you can put some pressure in on this county to find out what's going on? And find out, can you get them separated? At least get these 2 separated and get their stories separate. So you can begin to hear from this girl what her story is. Because they just kept them together in a detainment or something. I think but they got him on a traffic stop. But they treated him as runaway boyfriend scenario, and it wasn't that. We knew it was something more than that. 10 hours later, we had the girl headed back out, and I was trying to figure out what to do with them. And I lost track of I wasn't in the circle solution anymore after that.
Statistically, isn't it proven that these routine traffic stops reveal hard crimes?
Well, we were just talking, sir, I don't remember your name back here, but I asked you, are you going to stay on the patrol? And he said yes, because I can have that's my best place of influence, where I'm down at that one foot level impacting people. And I don't know about the statistics with that, but I will tell you, whenever we deal with someone, I separate them, I separate even the girls and the boys, I separate them all, and we start getting their individual stories to see. And I ask for documentation of who they are. No good self-respecting trafficker would leave their girls with identification, at least real identification. And so if you can ice them out and get a different story, then you find them being evasive, and ask them purpose questions. I mean, for real deal. I don't care what organization you're part of. Ask them purpose questions about their life. Where are they headed? What are your plans to do? What's your plans in life going to be? And then you find the black holes. And whenever I find one of those, I keep asking, I keep drilling. And I say, hey, can I help you? What if I could help you find something greater than you're in right now? What if I could help you find something bigger? What if there's other choices and options? And that's about all I can answer that. As far as, I've only been in a police cruiser a few times. So.
About the bruising and the branding and other physical markings that are listed?
Yeah, we've experienced the tattoos. We've experienced the identification tattoos. But there's also 2 things that happened with 2 different traffickers that one of my folks told me about. she came to me, she said, this second or third time we've done it, there's one spot that this trafficker would hit her over and over again, just one spot. And it just became an area, it was like a point of ownership or intimidation for her, that this part of her right now, because that's right where she would get hit all the time. And it was just like she got dog reflex if you ever came anywhere touching her, anywhere around that area. And he said, that's the only place she'd hit me, but hit me there over and over again. He would just go, I own you, poof, I own you, poof. And actually dislocated her shoulder a couple times in that same place. And if you've ever been around anywhere, and I don't want to get into it really, but structured abuse, where people are actually building psychological structure with abuse as they go, it's about recurrency, recurrent pain, recurrent impact, recurrent trauma. Because what it does in those points, it opens up something in the psyche, and the mind begins to shift and associates it with those things. So all they have to do is program a response. It drops an anchor in their emotions. And whenever this happens, it reminds me I'm this. Whenever this happens, I must do this. Or, and it shifts them into a whole different Funkyville mindset. And you guys know this. I mean, I teach a class about this in restoration, but I won't go any deeper in that. But you guys all know this happens because if you had a boyfriend or girlfriend and you remember the song when you got all squishy and fuzzy with him or her, and it marks you, right? It made emotion with her very first girl I ever loved. And she wouldn't marry me. But when that happened, she was chewing chocolate mint gum. And here I was married. I'd been married 26 years. I'd been married maybe about 18 years at the time. And I went to a dessert party, and they had chocolate mint cake. I smelled that aroma, and I just went whoosh, right back into that moment. I felt it. I was there. I was locked in. Because that point had made a traumatic impact in me when I was rejected with that moment. It marked me. And I realized that that mark was still there many, many years later. And all it just took was a stupid dessert to send me into that mode of mindset. And there's people who do that intentionally to season and program their minds. Okay, next question. Comments. How can we help you with training like this? What? District attorney's offices? County attorney offices, yes. County attorney offices. I've worked with USDAs, but we've never trained USDA because, and actually federally, they're supposed to have, in the Department of Justice, they're supposed to have recurring training process that come down at the DA level for all of that. But county attorneys, we've had a lot of impact with and told them all sorts of things because they know their laws, and if their states don't have laws, good teeth, then they're only enacting. I was in a panel in Iowa over all this, and these foster moms, all these people were just tearing apart this county attorney. And I had to stand up for her. And I said, whoa, y'all just sit down and be quiet, ladies. Come on. She only has the laws we have in place to have teeth. You can't fault the county attorney for only having so many things in these type of situations to deal with. And so we do work with them at that kind of a level. And we've had conferences with them involved and things like that. But I can't tell you I've done trainings for DAs. I've helped law enforcement officers develop a menu in their head. Okay? A menu in their head that says, in this situation, I know what I can do this, or this. And some people say, well, I don't really know what I do. So what if I find one, Rick, what do I do? I said, when you develop a plan, you know who to go to, what's the next steps for you. And I have them develop a multiple choice menu in their mind that they're equipped. And my brother-in-law tried this in Idaho with them to say, okay, what are your scenarios? You have processes and protocols that you do, but what are the processes you can answer? I love that rescue and restore questionnaire you guys have. And putting that in their hands is just brilliant because anything we can do to help them is great. But that equips you to have options. I'm going to start asking these questions, and so that I'm going to begin asking these processes. And if I get a nose for this, and I think that we got trafficking going on, I know my laws. I know my laws in the state of Texas, or state of Tennessee now, sorry, and I know what this has. I know where our law has teeth, and I know what to stay away from. I'm really surprised the FBI's pushed a couple Mann Acts, because that's good that they could do that. I mean, that's really good. That law's been around forever. But the TVPA's got teeth. And if a DA can push it, you got a good evidence, it's the way to go. But you'll know that. You go, this is that. I can tell the DA. I can tell the county DA, or I can tell the city attorney, or I can tell whoever it is. This would be perfect for this law. This would be perfect because I know you have to prove as a district attorney what I bring to you. And so your ability to see that, you can actually help them. And I think I said this with the FBI here, but we do white papers all the time. And I tell them, hey, look, this is this. You could get them on this law. 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 Just saying. And I help them out. And as a law enforcement officer, I bet you could arm yourself with a menu protocol of some things to think about this. If it's your beat you're on, I tell people, every Asian nail salon, I want to have an eye on, and I want to get a nose for it. Every massage parlor, I want to have an eye on and a nose. Is this profiling? Yeah. Okay. And I want to know these processes, things that so now you know your eyes are open. You'll start to get the hinkies on stuff, and you'll start to be aware of stuff that's just not right, and you'll have to look under the hood a couple different ways. Let me ask you a question. It is true that the nonprofits and NGOs, and I'm being very general here, are usually not very organizationally tied to each other, and they're pretty fragmented. And it is true that they wouldn't have a good natural understanding of law enforcement, because you guys are in an entire industry of understanding yourselves and the codes you guys know and the laws you guys know. But here's where I think the only answer to this is real, just fly, because you can't do this from a conference, but it really means that the NGOs and the relationships that are around you is help them understand what it is that you do and have them understand what it is you can't do, that you're here to enforce these laws, that you're here to do this, and then understand where you start, where you stop, where they start, where they stop, and build a relationship with this. We call it DTR. We're talking about it in the back. We do this all the time, and it's called define the relationship, okay? It's define the relationship. It says, here's my role. I understand where I stop and start. I understand what I do. I'm not going to play your job, but I want to understand what you do and where you stop. And then I want you to understand what I can do, because even though we're an NGO or an NPO, whatever we are, we're not God's answer to everything. We're usually God's answer to a dot in the thing. And you need to know what dots you have at your resources, and we need to know what other dots we have in our resources. I don't know any other way to do this. It's like the last slide in one of these presentations. I said, this is why building relationship is really the only way through this, because organizations do not really work inherently well together. But if we can build a relationship, be aware of each other, and value that relationship enough to where I'm willing to sit down with you and say, tell me what your world's like, bro. And I'll tell you what I'm dealing with in the client side, and here's where we can interact, and here's where we'll need to get someone else because we don't fit this. When we sat different organizations down on task forces, we've really done a marble process. And this is going to sound silly to you, but I said everybody in this room has 5 marbles, and you label your 5 marbles. I want to know what you got. I want to know what authority you have, and I want to know what skill sets you have. Okay? And if you don't have marbles you're bringing to this table, leave the room. But we're here to bring a solution. It's going to take a whole bag of marbles to make this happen, and I want to know what you got. And so if you have an authority, if you have influence, or you have skills in something, write that down on your marbles. I use these flat marbles, these flat rocks, marbles. And I said, okay, now these are all the marbles we have at this table right now. What are we going to build together? What does this look like in a line? What does this look like in a string? How can we play together? How can we move together? Where do you start and I stop? Where do I stop and you start? And how can we move forward with this? And we did this in Azusa, California. And we had a whole bunch of organizations together. And there were organizations who didn't even know that they existed in the same town before we brought this together. They said, I had no idea you did that. I just thought you were out there just trying to proselyte everybody into your church. And so understanding this, it only happens with a relationship. I don't know. Organizations just don't play well together inherently. Does the FBI and ICE play together? You kidding? Does HHS and ICE play together? Not even on Thanksgiving. And do all the local law enforcement play together? You know, no. Okay? Is there differences in organizations between up here and down? Yeah, there's all these kind of things. So relationships are always going to be that. I have a DOJ consultant in Austin who'll call me. She'll say, hey, who do you know in this area that I can touch? And I'll say, I know this person in Nashville. I know this person here because I know their marbles. I know how they roll. And I don't know how to do it faster than that. with the state of Kansas was with us the other day. She laid out the first hour we were all together. She laid out all the things that weren't working in Kansas. She laid all the things that were broken. She laid all the way things were not, all the conflict. And I said, wow, kind of sucks to be us right now, doesn't it? And I said, what if it was different? I said, what if it was different? She goes, what do you mean? She goes, well, there's only certain things I can't do. I said, I don't care about what you can't do. What if it was different? If you never start asking me those questions, we'll never create anything different. We'll never build a relationship. We'll never try anything different. We'll never, and these guys are evolving, you know, like rabbits reproduce. And so until we don't start saying, what if it was different, what if it was different, what if it was different. And I don't know that organizations can change that fast. Your PD department, your organization is not going to change anytime soon like this, but people can change mindsets. People can build things immediately. How you roll in your influence, where you put your influence, how you show up on this earth any given day is your call. And you can create opportunity, you can create influence, but if all you say is, here's what they don't let me do, here's what we can't do, here's what we do, here's what we can't do, that's all you'll find. And I think I'll close with this statement. There's a model we've used in this human trafficking industry in the restoration called appreciation inquiry. And I will tell you, it saved us. It's allowed us to create things. And it's this. Go on a fast of finding what doesn't work. And take the next 7 days and quit identifying things that don't work. Find the things that do and make them better. And create something new. Take 7 days and starve yourself of focusing on what doesn't work. And starving yourself of the negativity in this industry, and starve yourself of the negative side of this thing. And what happens is like getting the paddles, it forces your mind back into creative mode. So you create solutions, and you what if yourself, and you find answers to things you weren't even thinking about. You'll create stuff. So I told this lady in the meeting, I said, it's going to be a long 2 days here if we just focus on that. So what could it be different? Tell me what it would be like for you to call it good. Tell me what it would be like to be effective. Tell me what you need in your hands for something to work. Let's create some ideas and build relationships with people so it works. We have Operation Refuge in the state of Iowa, where I have an 800 number that anyone can call in the state of Iowa and get assigned to any NGO, any nonprofit, faith-based organization for services. 24 hours a day, anyone can call and say, I need prayer help, I need marriage help, whatever they call Operation Refuge there. And so she said, can I have that in Kansas? I said, sure. Done. We just gave it to them. Because she realized she had an answer, but if that didn't happen to her, we started creating solution. It is bad. It is dark. It's the butt ugliest thing I've ever had. When God called me this, he says, this is going to trouble your heart for the rest of your life. It does. But I'm not going to stop creating solution in the process because of it. So it's a mindset shift we all get to go after. Because at the end of the day, we take our badges off and our nonprofits and 501c3s. We're just still people trying to make a difference.
For people like me, if somebody doesn't tell us what you need, what can we do? How can we help? That's what I'm here to learn, is where can I plug in? How can I help? What can I do? I have an NGO. I am an NGO. What can I do?
If I could just give you a nugget of what I would just say is work with the organization here. Work with Alana Marion, who's put this together. And just at minimum, share your contact information one to another so you are aware of each other. It was my preachy coming out of me. But there's a movie. Do you remember Avatar, the movie? I didn't even think it was that good a movie, but there's one phrase in the movie that I thought was so powerful because I'm really big into people changing. And this is how they greeted each other. They greeted each other. They just said, I see you. It's the power of acknowledgement. And it's not just saying, you law enforcement guys do such a good job. That's just my opinion. That's a bunch of noise. Me just saying, you're doing such a good job. You just keep it up. That's just my opinion. And you don't need my opinion. You need me to acknowledge you. You need me to acknowledge you in what you're up to and what you're doing. And if we can acknowledge each other, that is saying, I want to know what you do so I can agree and acknowledge what you're doing because it's valuable, because you're making a dent. And basic acknowledgement of understanding who we are in this room, What marbles we bring to the table is acknowledging what you've taken your life, when you could be doing all sorts of fun stuff, and devoted your life to craft a few marbles that says, here's my influence that I'm going to bring down to this earth right here, these influences right here. And the real problem is we don't know about what your marbles, which you acknowledge. The only way I'll know is by having some sort of fabric together we can acknowledge each other and acknowledge what we bring. I would love to know what your history is and what your story is, because I want to understand your role in law enforcement. I want to understand how you got to where you're at and what you bring to the table, because I want to know you so that if I come back here, I can go, hey, I know somebody. And I know what he brings. I don't know how to do it without a relationship, and this is where we usually stumble, even especially in the faith-based community. There's a ton of competition in our own realm over money and all that. And so, but this is my challenge to you, is build a relationship and find out. I'd love to know what it's like for you on the front end of the street, or what it's like for the detectives dealing with all the follow-up they have to do. It's different all across the nation. So, but I think that's the recipe, is to build a relationship, acknowledge each other, and know what each other brings to the table. That's my pitch. Sticking to it. Bless you guys.